Okay, Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today is Wednesday, the 22nd of September, 2021. Click on the subscribe button below here on the lower right to subscribe to the episodes, and also the notification bell in the upper right to be notified when they're released. Today's episode is, who needs to listen and shut up? Black racists contend that critical race theory reveals crucial faults in our traditional understanding of racism. For at least a century or so, Americans have thought it possible to be either racist or not racist. Not so, says Ibram X. Kendi. People can only be racist or anti-racist. Now, to be anti-racist is to support policies, typically government or institutional policies, that reduce so-called racial inequities, meaning outcomes. Therefore, if Blacks collectively have lower academic achievements, the anti-racist argues that affirmative action programs should be expanded until the academic performance between Blacks and whites is evened up. Kendi concludes, quote, "The only remedy for past discrimination is present discrimination." So that means that the remedy for past discrimination against Blacks is present discrimination against whites. That's Kendi. That's what he's saying. Now, according to critical race theory, racial classes or groups are either victims or oppressors. If you are Black, you are a victim. If you are white, you are an oppressor. Until the racial outcomes are evened up, whether it's the number of people in prison or the number of people earning over $100,000 a year, or whatever those outcomes, if they're not evened up, they need to be evened up. And if they aren't evened up, there is no other explanation for the disparate outcomes than racism. Differing behaviors collectively have nothing to do with it. Any white who denies it is impossible to be, quote, not racist must be re-educated. According to Kendi, quote, "To be anti-racist requires a radical reorientation of our consciousness," close quote. So sit down and shut up while Kendi and other racists lecture you about their perspective, which has historically been unheard. Now, ironically, however, few people realize that the Southern perspective of the Civil War has also been unheard. And in fact, it has been deliberately censored since at least the late 1980s, reflecting the adage that winners write the history. When Kendi supports, quote, "no middle ground," close quote, on slavery reparations, he is no doubt unaware, as are academics, that the South has already paid reparations for losing the war, if not slavery. Well, let me go down and share something here to help make the point. I want to share that and bring up my notes. Now, this accompanying table summarizes federal tax revenue and spending for a quarter of a century following the Civil War. More than half of federal tax revenues were applied to three items: interest on the federal debt, 1; 2, budget surpluses, and 3, union veterans benefits or pensions. Although compelled to pay their share of taxes to fund them, postbellum Confederates derived no benefit whatsoever from the allocations. First, federal debt jumped 40-fold from 65 million to 2.7 billion during the 4-year Civil War. Postbellum Southerners had to pay their share of that interest on that debt, although former Confederates did not hold the federal bonds upon which the interest was paid. The bonds were held almost entirely by people in the North and institutions in the North, such as banks. Second, the budget surpluses were caused chiefly by protective tariffs that generated more income than necessary to operate the federal government. The restrictive tariffs chiefly benefited manufacturers and their ecosystems north of the Mason-Dixon line and the Ohio River. Although such tariffs benefited northern manufacturers, they were detrimental to the South's export economy. Southerners wanted low tariffs that would enable European imports to generate the exchange credits that the Europeans would need to pay for American cotton. Tariffs on dutiable items were 19% before the war, but averaged 45% for the next 50 years. Third, former Confederates derived no benefit from Union veterans' pensions, even though they had to pay their fair share to cover those benefits. By 1950, such pensions had totaled $8 billion. The annual payments went up every year until 1921 when they started to come down. But by 1950, the $8 billion totaled almost 3 times the total cost of the 4-year war. The last pension was paid in May of 2020. In short, if anyone needs to shut up and listen, it is the academic historians, the media, the Hollywood, and just about all Americans who think that anyone who disagrees with the academics should not be heard because they assume before listening that the dissenter is merely going to repeat so-called lost cause mythology. Consider, for example, that few, if any, academic historians have come to the defense of Confederate statues. I have not seen one book from the academic press to provide a full-throated defense of them, or even a modest defense of them, as if there is no meritorious defense that can be made. And that's how one-sided it has become. So what I'd like to do is, if you'd like to learn more about how the things went during Reconstruction and how the South had already paid reparations, I encourage you to get U.S. Grant's Failed Presidency, my book. It's $22 an hour at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. If you'd like to get an autographed copy, you can get it from me. Just email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _Leigh, L-E-I-G-H at me.com. And I will send you, we'll make arrangements to send you an autographed copy of the book for $25 if you live here in the United States. It will be $25 and I will cover the postage and delivery. Okay, that's our show for today, and thanks for watching.